From day one. The easiest thing in the world is to be yourself. Everybody else taking up, why not be you?
Imagine being so unstoppable, the NBA had to change its culture just to keep up. From Hampton, Virginia, raised by a teenage mother, Allen Iverson exploded from poverty to the #1 pick in 1996, redefining the game with hip-hop swagger and a crossover that broke ankles and expectations. But before the answer, there was almost no answer at all. At 17, he was jailed after a bowling alley brawl, conviction later overturned, and his future hung by a thread. He roared back at Georgetown, averaging 23 points and winning 2 Big East Defensive Player of the Year awards, proof that heart can beat height. Then Philly handed him the keys, and a 6-foot giant changed basketball and culture forever. This is the life of Allen Iverson: resilience, rebellion, and greatness on his own terms. Let's take it back to where it all started. Allen Aziel Iverson was born on June 7, 1975, in Hampton, Virginia, a place where poverty and violence hung in the air like an unshakable fog. His mother, Ann Iverson, was just 15, raising him without support from his father. Their home often lacked heat, water, or electricity, and at one point a ruptured sewer line filled the house with a harsh smell seeping through the floors. Despite this instability, Allen stepped into responsibility early. He cared for his younger sisters as if he were their shield, taking on burdens that shaped his determination the way pressure shapes steel. For a short time, stability came through Michael Freeman, his mother's boyfriend, who became a father figure and taught him basketball. But after losing his job, Freeman turned to selling drugs and drifted in and out of jail. Not long after, another important figure in Allen's life, Tony, was tragically killed, adding to the string of losses that shadowed his childhood. The streets around him were equally unforgiving. By his teens, 8 of his friends had been murdered, including one of his closest companions. Growing up in Hampton often felt like walking through a battlefield with no map, and Iverson knew escape would depend entirely on his own will. At Bethel High School, his talent broke through like sunlight after a long storm. Nicknamed Bubba Chuck, he became a 2-sport sensation, an electric quarterback and an explosive basketball star. In 1992, he led Bethel's football team to a state championship, and by his junior year, he guided both the football and basketball teams to Virginia state titles, earning AP High School Player of the Year in both sports, a feat as rare as lightning striking twice. But at 17, his world nearly collapsed. A racially charged brawl at a bowling alley led to 3 felony convictions and a 15-year sentence. For 4 months, it looked as if everything he had built would crumble. Then the conviction was overturned due to insufficient evidence, granting him a narrow escape from a future he didn't deserve. Through it all, Iverson held on to the plan: finish high school, reach college, make it to the NBA. His talent caught the eye of Georgetown's legendary coach John Thompson, who saw past the headlines to the rare, fiery potential beneath. From the struggles of Hampton to the hope of Georgetown, Iverson's early life closed with a spark that would soon ignite into greatness. When Allen Iverson entered the NBA in 1996, the league felt a quiet tremor that quickly swelled into a quake. Drafted first overall by the Philadelphia 76ers, he didn't arrive as a polished superstar, but as raw electricity, a force of nature waiting to strike. From his first step onto an NBA court, Iverson played with a fierce, almost rebellious fire. His crossover, lightning quick and impossible to predict, stunned defenders and fans alike. Night after night, he attacked the basket like a storm crashing against the shore. By the end of his debut season, he claimed the NBA Rookie of the Year award, announcing himself as one of the league's most electrifying new stars. As the seasons unfolded, Iverson's rise felt volcanic. He didn't just score, he erupted, becoming a 4-time scoring champion in 1999, 2001, 2002, and 2005. His fearless drives, relentlessness, and ability to dominate despite his size made him both a marvel and an anomaly. Along the way, he earned 11 All-Star selections and captured 2 All-Star Game MVPs, turning the league's brightest stage into his own personal showcase. But the pinnacle came in the 2000 to 2001 season. Though only 6 feet tall, Iverson played like a giant with fire in his veins, carrying the 76ers to their first NBA Finals appearance since 1983. His leadership and relentless scoring earned him the NBA Most Valuable Player award, officially making him the heartbeat of the league. Yet Iverson's influence stretched far beyond his stat line. He didn't just play the game, he reshaped its culture. With his cornrows, tattoos, and unapologetically street-inspired style, he brought hip-hop aesthetics into the NBA spotlight, inspiring a generation of athletes to embrace their identities without filter or apology. His professional journey spanned 14 seasons, taking him from Philadelphia to the Denver Nuggets, Detroit Pistons, and Memphis Grizzlies, before eventually returning home to the 76ers. Wherever he went, his intensity followed, fiery, fearless, and impossible to contain. When his playing days ended, the recognition only grew. In 2016, Iverson was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, honoring a career that changed the sport. 5 years later, he earned a place among the legends on the NBA 75th anniversary team, solidifying his legacy as one of the most influential players in basketball history. Iverson's 24,368 career points, along with his averages of 26.7 points, 6.2 assists, and 3.7 rebounds per game, reflect a relentless scorer, but they still don't capture his full impact. Because Allen Iverson wasn't just an athlete. He was a movement, raw, defiant, unforgettable. He was and will always remain the answer. His professional journey made him a star, but it was his life beyond basketball that made him human. And the story of Allen Iverson's relationships is where the heart of his journey truly begins. Allen Iverson's personal life unfolded like a love story, surviving through storms. Long before fame found him, he fell for Tawanna Turner, his high school sweetheart, their bond forming long before the world knew his name. As Iverson became the answer, their relationship deepened. They entered adulthood together as young parents, eventually marrying in 2001 after nearly a decade of shared struggle and devotion. But fame's glare was harsh. Arguments, financial strain, and Iverson's battles with drinking pulled at their marriage, turning their once steady love into a cycle of devotion and conflict. By 2010, the strain became too much. Tawanna filed for divorce, a moment Iverson later called the lowest point of his life. A second filing in 2011 led to their marriage ending in 2013, leaving a wound deeper than any he'd suffered on the court. In time, Iverson confronted his struggles, especially alcohol abuse, and slowly rebuilt himself. Sobriety opened a path for him and Tawanna to reconnect, not as spouses, but as two people rediscovering a bond forged over more than 30 years. He later described her as his number one, the steady force he could never replace. Today, though no longer married, their connection remains strong. Iverson often praises Tawanna for her loyalty, strength, and dedication to raising their 5 children, acknowledging how deeply she shaped his life. His personal story is ultimately one of love, tested, nearly lost, and transformed, revealing a man far more human than the legend seen on the court. Once you step outside the intimacy of his personal life, another intrigue emerges: Iverson's wealth and the dramatic journey behind how he earns and spends it. Allen Iverson's money story moved like his crossover, fast, daring, and unforgettable. At his peak, cash came in at breakneck speed, over $150 million in NBA salary, plus roughly $50 million in endorsements, with Reebok as the anchor. During his prime, one Detroit season alone paid him $20.8 million. But as the flood rose, so did the outflow. Cars, jewelry, lavish nights, a large entourage, and with shaky advice, the fortune bled away. Reports later showed a brutal mismatch, about $360,000 going out each month, against only $62,500 coming in. Debts piled up, a jewelry bill near $860,000, and the empire seemed to evaporate almost overnight, like smoke after fireworks. Yet long before the slide, a safety net had been stitched into his future. At the height of his fame, Reebok structured a rare deal: $800,000 annually for life, plus a $32 million trust sealed until age 55, a nest egg built to withstand storms. When the finances crumbled, that trust became the quiet hero, untouched, shielded, waiting, while the lifetime payments steadied him through the hardest years. In time, he rebuilt. He stepped back into Reebok as vice president of basketball, aligning with Shaquille O'Neal as the brand pressed forward under $2.5 billion ownership. A full circle moment where the company he lifted once again lifted him. He also branched out. A cannabis collaboration with Al Harrington's Viola and a golf line with Reebok that reimagined his question sneaker. Fresh lanes for a legacy brand and a legend determined to stay relevant. By 2026, estimates put his net worth near $1 million. But the runway ahead is long. The Reebok annuity keeps paying, and the $32 million trust remains locked until his mid-50s, a reset button waiting just beyond the horizon. Like a lighthouse he's steadily steering toward. Iverson's wealth story isn't merely riches. It's excess and collapse, foresight and redemption. As unpredictable as his handle, as explosive as his prime, and ultimately as resilient as the man himself. Step away from the trophies and bank statements, and you'll find the clearest mirror of Iverson's style. His garage. Allen Iverson's love of cars was as unmistakable as his crossover, loud, flashy, and impossible to miss. His garage wasn't storage. It was a stage where each ride played a different role in his persona. Bold, blisteringly fast, extravagantly unapologetic. At the center sat a Mercedes Maybach 57S, luxury dipped in midnight, deep black paint, smoked lights, and 24-inch Savini wheels, framing a 6.0-liter twin-turbo V12 with 603 horsepower. Price tag? $340,000 to $400,000. Even the Pirelli tires were made just for him, because ordinary rubber didn't fit a life lived in italics. His taste also drifted across the Atlantic to British opulence. The Bentley Continental GT, about $220,000, all hand-stitched calm on the inside and muscle on the outside, as refined and forceful as a silk glove hiding a clenched fist. No early 2000s empire was complete without a Cadillac Escalade, stickered around $60,990, wearing tints and chrome-like jewelry. One infamous night it landed in headlines after being found damaged during a police check, a mystery later chalked up to kids, not crime, adding another footnote to Iverson lore. When he wanted presence that felt armored, he rolled a Hummer H1 Alpha HX, a street-legal battering ram he eventually sold for roughly $128,374. It wasn't subtle, it was a drumline on wheels. These weren't mere purchases, they were statements. Sleek paint, roaring engines, custom flourishes, symbols of freedom and speed, like victory laps on ordinary streets. Even after financial turbulence forced him to part with some keys, the legend of Iverson's garage still hums. Fearless, flashy, unforgettable. The automotive echo of the man who drove culture as easily as he drove his cars. Now let's open another chapter. The addresses that mapped his highs, his lows, and everything in between. Allen Iverson's homes chart the arc of a man whose life rose like a rocket, crashed hard, and then settled into something quieter. Each property he owned seemed to echo a chapter of his journey, some shining with the glory of his prime, others carrying the weight of the storms that followed. His real estate story began when he was at the height of his fame, buying a $2.4 million colonial mansion in Gladwin, Pennsylvania, secluded behind gates in one of the state's most exclusive areas. At 8,141 square feet, with sweeping lawns, a wine cellar, a mini gym, a pool, and room after room basking in luxury, the house felt like a physical version of his iconic crossover, grand, confident, and unmistakably Iverson. He later sold it for $2.85 million, one of the few financial wins in a life where off-court victories weren't guaranteed. But the star of his next chapter burned even brighter. During the peak of his superstardom, he moved into a sprawling 14,000 square foot Villanova mansion, purchased for roughly $5 million, with 9 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen stocked with Viking and Sub-Zero appliances, heated marble floors, private lounges, and a saltwater pool. It looked like something built for a king. Yet even a kingdom can feel heavy. As his finances stumbled, the mansion became too much to carry, and he sold it for $2.6 million, a steep and painful drop that mirrored the turbulence creeping into his life. That same pattern followed him to Alpharetta, Georgia, where he bought a European-style mansion for $2.19 million. It had almost everything, nearly 6,000 square feet, 7 bedrooms, a bar, entertainment rooms, a media room, and even a 4-car garage perfect for displaying his legendary car collection. But beauty didn't stop the financial freefall. The home slipped into foreclosure, eventually selling for just $725,000, a dramatic fall from its original value. like a reminder that even the strongest foundations can crack. As legal battles, money troubles, and a painful divorce unfolded, Iverson's once lavish homes became symbols of a life lived at full speed. Some he sold at heavy losses, others he lost outright. The properties stood like silent witnesses reflecting the truth he couldn't always face. Fame burns bright, but it burns fast. And yet, just as he did on the court, Iverson found his way back. Now, he lives more quietly in Charlotte's upscale Ballantine neighborhood, sharing a home with his youngest children. There are no soaring marble halls or sprawling indoor courts, just a driveway hoop where he shoots with his son, a man cave filled with old jerseys and magazine covers, and a sense of peace he once chased in mansions but never found. The home may be smaller, but it carries something richer. The calm of a man who has learned to choose presence over grandeur. Iverson's homes were never just walls and roofs. They were mirrors reflecting his rise, his missteps, his losses, and ultimately, his growth. From million-dollar estates to a family-focused refuge in Charlotte, each one marks a chapter in the life of a legend who was always more human than myth. Of course, Iverson's journey wasn't all luxury and highlight reels. There were moments that tested him, and they weren't always pretty. As a teen, a bowling alley brawl in Hampton made him a national flashpoint. He was sentenced to 15 years, then freed when the conviction was overturned for insufficient evidence, leaving a stigma that trailed him into the NBA. Fame magnified every misstep. A stop for speeding led to concealed weapon and marijuana charges, no contest plea, community service, while his unreleased rap single 40 Bars drew fire over its lyrics. Then came the line heard, "Round the world, we talking about practice." A viral clip born from grief over a slain best friend and a season under siege, not indifference to work. Accusations in a domestic dispute/gun case collapsed in court, but not in public opinion. Even a casino ban for urinating in a trash can became tabloid fuel. Meanwhile, money woes surfaced. $62.5 thousand monthly income versus $360,000 expenses, and an $860,000 jewelry debt spotlighted a financial freefall. Through it all, Iverson remained raw and resilient, misunderstood, magnetic, unmistakably human. At the end of the day, Allen Iverson wasn't just a basketball icon. He was a statement. From million-dollar mansions to roaring engines and custom Maybachs and Bentleys, his life moved with the same electricity he brought to the court. His luxury wasn't quiet. It hit like a bass line, bold and unforgettable. He lived fast, dressed loud, and drove like every street was a runway. Yet behind the cars, the jewelry, and the fame, the real luxury he earned was something deeper. The peace he found later in life, surrounded by family and far from the noise that once followed him everywhere. Iverson's story is proof that luxury isn't just what you own. It's surviving everything thrown at you and still standing strong. If you enjoyed this look into a legend's world, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned. There's always more behind the players you think you know. Until next time, stay legendary.